Philadelphia, winter of 1744. In a candlelit parlor where an open hearth once threw dancing flames and crackling sparks, visitors now stared at something that looked like a dark iron coffin nested inside the firebox. "You'll freeze with that thing smothering the fire," muttered one neighbor. Another joked it resembled a burial vault more than a heating device. But Benjamin Franklin, the printer and experimenter who had installed this cast iron contraption, kept meticulous records. His wall tally showed 12 cords of wood stacked in October, 9 still standing untouched in February. A thermometer on his mantel held steady at 62 degrees, 8 feet from the fireplace, while his neighbors crowded within arm's reach of their roaring hearths just to feel warmth. The master mason who built traditional fireplaces called Franklin's iron insert a fool's contraption that would suffocate any proper fire. What the skeptics didn't understand was that open hearths dumped 70 to 90% of their heat straight up the chimney, while Franklin's Pennsylvania Fireplace trapped that escaping heat and circulated it through iron channels back into the room. Then came the brutal winter of 1745. Record cold gripped the mid-Atlantic. Neighbors burned through cord after cord, their grand fireplaces creating spectacular flames that warmed only the fortunate few standing directly in front. But Franklin's dark iron box quietly heated his entire parlor with a fraction of the fuel. What did this Philadelphia tinkerer understand about heat, draft, and convection that centuries of fireplace builders had missed? If you value stories of practical wisdom that stood the test of time, make sure to subscribe. We've got more documented accounts worth remembering. Comment your city and time. We love reading where these documentaries reach. The iron insert that sparked such ridicule in Franklin's Philadelphia parlor represented more than mere household convenience. It embodied a fundamental shift in how Americans understood heat, fuel, and survival itself. While neighbors clung to the romance of open flames dancing against sooty brick, Franklin had spent months studying the mathematical reality of thermal loss. His calculations, recorded in neat columns alongside sketches of airflow patterns, revealed what traditional hearth builders refused to acknowledge. Their spectacular fires were magnificent failures of engineering. The Pennsylvania Fireplace, as Franklin dubbed his cast iron innovation, measured 26 inches wide, 16 inches deep, and 24 inches high when properly seated within an existing hearth opening. Unlike the gaping maw of conventional fireplaces that sucked heated room air up the chimney at rates Franklin measured as high as 2,000 cubic feet per minute, his iron box created a closed system where combustion air entered through carefully positioned channels, while room air circulated through separate passages heated by the iron walls. The principle seemed almost insultingly simple. Instead of allowing heat to escape directly up the flue, force it to travel a longer path, warming iron surfaces that would radiate and convect that captured energy back into the living space. Franklin's neighbors, particularly Master Mason William Thornberry, who had built grand fireplaces for Philadelphia's merchant class for over 2 decades, viewed the iron contraption as an affront to established craft knowledge. Thornberry's fireplaces featured throats sized according to formulas passed down through generations of stoneworkers, typically 1/12 the hearth opening area, with smoke shelves angled to prevent downdrafts and flues, sized to create the powerful draw that traditional heating demanded. When Thornberry examined Franklin's insert, he pronounced it a death trap that will smoke every soul from the house and leave them shivering besides. The Mason's objections weren't merely aesthetic. They reflected decades of experience with failed heating experiments and the genuine technical challenges of managing smoke in colonial-era chimneys. Yet Franklin's methodical approach drew inspiration from sources Thornberry had never considered. Through correspondence with Pennsylvania German ironworkers, Franklin learned techniques for casting plates thick enough to store and radiate heat, while thin enough to transfer warmth efficiently. These immigrant craftsmen, familiar with European heating stoves that burned small, hot fires in closed chambers, provided both technical expertise and cultural precedent for Franklin's innovation. Johann Zimmermann, a founder operating near Lancaster, supplied the initial castings and shared crucial knowledge about baffle placement, joint design, and the thermal properties of different iron alloys. The testing period that followed Franklin's installation revealed results that confounded traditional heating wisdom. Where Thornberry's open fireplaces required constant feeding, armloads of split oak every 30 to 40 minutes to maintain adequate heat, Franklin's iron insert burned smaller charges of wood every 90 minutes while maintaining steadier temperatures throughout the room. Temperature readings taken at table height, 8 feet from the fireplace, showed Franklin's parlor holding 62 to 66 degrees during January, cold snaps when outdoor temperatures dropped to 15 degrees. Thornberry's identically sized parlor, heated by a traditional fireplace of his own construction, registered 48 to 52 degrees at the same distance from the hearth. More telling still were the fuel consumption records Franklin maintained with printer's precision. His household burned through 4 cords of seasoned hardwood during the winter of 1744 to 1745, compared to the 11 cords consumed by his neighbor Thomas Hopkinson, whose house boasted a fireplace Thornberry considered among his finest work. Franklin's iron insert achieved this efficiency through what he termed the lengthened path principle, forcing hot combustion gases to travel around iron baffles before reaching the flue, extracting heat that would otherwise escape while the iron walls warmed room air through natural convection currents. The mechanical elegance of Franklin's system extended beyond mere fuel savings. Traditional fireplaces created what Franklin measured as negative pressure throughout the house, pulling heated air from every room toward the chimney. This constant airflow not only wasted fuel, but created drafts that made rooms uncomfortable even when adequately heated. The iron insert, with its controlled combustion air supply and sealed firebox, eliminated this house-wide suction while creating gentle convection currents that distributed warmth more evenly than radiant heating alone could achieve. Opposition to Franklin's innovation came not only from established tradesmen, but from Philadelphia society itself, where the evening hearth served social functions beyond mere heating. The iron facade blocked the hypnotic dance of flames that had anchored household gatherings for generations, replacing visual spectacle with the steady glow of heated metal. Visitors to Franklin's home often commented on the gloomy appearance of the iron box, unable to appreciate the thermal engineering that allowed comfortable conversation 8 feet from the fire, rather than the traditional huddling within arm's reach of the flames. Franklin's detailed pamphlet, An Account of the New Invented Pennsylvania Fireplaces, published in 1744, provided technical specifications and installation guidance that allowed the innovation to spread beyond his personal workshop. The pamphlet included precise measurements for hearth modification, baffle placement, and damper operation, written in language accessible to competent tradesmen rather than the Latin-heavy academic style that characterized most technical publications of the era. Franklin's approach reflected his printer's understanding that practical knowledge required clear communication to achieve widespread adoption. The winter of 1745 provided the crucial test that would determine whether Franklin's iron insert represented genuine innovation or merely fashionable experimentation. Record-breaking cold gripped the mid-Atlantic region from December through March, with temperatures reaching 22 degrees below zero in February, conditions that would reveal whether controlled draft heating could match the raw power of traditional open fires when survival itself hung in the balance. The mechanics of Franklin's heating revolution rested on principles that challenged every assumption colonial builders held about fire, smoke, and thermal dynamics. Where traditional fireplace construction prioritized maximum flame visibility and powerful updraft, Franklin's iron insert operated on what he termed the doctrine of retained heat, capturing thermal energy that conventional hearths surrendered to the sky and converting it into useful room warming through carefully engineered airflow patterns. The cast iron firebox itself represented a masterwork of 18th century metallurgy, weighing 230 pounds when fully assembled and featuring walls 3/4 of an inch thick. Johann Zimmermann's foundry near Lancaster had cast the components according to Franklin's specifications. A backplate measuring 24 by 26 inches, side plates angled at 15 degrees to direct heat forward, and a distinctive top plate pierced with precisely positioned openings that created the system's crucial air channels. The iron's composition, a blend of bog iron ore and recycled metal that Zimmermann had perfected over 15 years of stove making, provided the thermal mass necessary to store and radiate heat long after the fire had died to coals. Franklin's innovation centered on transforming the chaotic thermal waste of open hearth burning into organized, useful heat transfer. Traditional fireplaces operated as thermal disasters, with combustion gases rushing directly up the flue at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees, carrying with them the majority of the fuel's energy content. The iron insert interrupted this wasteful process through a series of baffles, thin iron plates positioned to force hot gases through serpentine paths before reaching the chimney. These baffles, each measuring 18 inches long and 6 inches wide, created what Franklin calculated as 4 additional seconds of contact time between hot gases and heat-absorbing iron surfaces. The convection system that distinguished Franklin's design from simple iron boxes represented his most sophisticated engineering achievement. Cool room air entered the system through openings at floor level, traveling through channels formed between the iron firebox and the original stone hearth walls. As this air passed around and behind the heated iron surfaces, it warmed to temperatures Franklin measured at 120 to 140 degrees before emerging through grills positioned 36 inches above the floor. This natural circulation, driven entirely by thermal dynamics without fans or mechanical assistance, moved approximately 80 cubic feet of heated air per minute through the room during steady burns. The controlled combustion that Franklin's insert achieved eliminated the violent air currents that made traditional fireplaces uncomfortable and inefficient. Open hearths created house-wide negative pressure by consuming room air for combustion and draft, pulling heated air from distant rooms toward the chimney, and forcing cold outdoor air through every crack and crevice in the building envelope. Franklin's system addressed this problem through an optional outside air duct, a 4-inch clay pipe that delivered combustion air directly to the firebox from outdoors, eliminating the thermal penalty of burning expensive heated room air. Installation of the Pennsylvania Fireplace required modifications that revealed Franklin's understanding of both thermal engineering and practical building constraints. The iron assembly sat on a bed of fire brick laid with clay mortar, positioned to leave half-inch gaps on each side for thermal expansion. A sheet iron collar, fabricated by local tinsmiths according to Franklin's patterns, connected the insert smoke outlet to the existing chimney flue while maintaining the reversible installation that allowed homeowners to remove the system for maintenance or seasonal cleaning. The critical damper mechanism, a pivoting iron plate controlled by an external handle, provided the precise draft control that made efficient combustion possible. Franklin's systematic approach to optimizing burn characteristics represented a departure from the casual fire tending practices that characterized colonial heating, where traditional fireplace users simply piled on wood and adjusted their seating distance to achieve comfort. The iron insert required what Franklin called scientific firing, small, hot fires burned at high temperatures to minimize smoke production and maximize heat extraction. His recommended firing cycle called for charges of 12 to 15 pounds of seasoned hardwood every 90 minutes, burned with sufficient air to maintain clear, blue-tinged flames rather than the smoky, oxygen-starved fires that characterized many colonial hearths. Temperature monitoring throughout Franklin's house revealed the system's superior heat distribution characteristics. Using alcohol thermometers positioned at various heights and distances from the fireplace, Franklin documented how the iron insert created more uniform heating than radiant fireplaces could achieve. At table height throughout his parlor, temperatures varied by only 3 to 4 degrees, compared to the 15 to 20 degree variations typical of open hearth heating. Most significantly, corners and areas traditionally considered cold zones in heated rooms maintained temperatures within 6 degrees of the warmest spots, eliminating the sharp temperature gradients that made colonial homes uncomfortable despite massive fuel consumption. The Pennsylvania German influence on Franklin's design extended beyond simple metalworking techniques to encompass fundamental concepts of controlled heating that immigrant communities had developed in response to harsh European winters. These craftsmen understood that effective heating required thermal mass, controlled draft, and extended heat exchange surfaces, principles that colonial English builders, accustomed to abundant wood and milder climates, had never fully grasped. Zimmerman and his fellow ironworkers provided Franklin with crucial knowledge about cast iron behavior, joint design, and the relationship between combustion air supply and heat output that made the insert's sophisticated operation possible. Franklin's documentation of fuel quality requirements revealed another dimension of the insert's technical sophistication. Where open fireplaces could burn green wood, construction waste, and mixed materials with acceptable results, the iron insert demanded well-seasoned hardwood dried to moisture contents below 20%. This fuel selection, combined with the system's controlled air supply, produced complete combustion that generated maximum heat while minimizing creosote formation and chimney maintenance requirements. Franklin's firing logs showed consistent burn times and heat output that allowed precise calculation of seasonal fuel needs, a predictability that traditional fireplace users could never achieve. The iron insert's safety characteristics addressed colonial America's constant fear of house fires and chimney blazes. The controlled combustion chamber prevented the spark emission and flame rollback that made open fireplaces dangerous, while the sealed system eliminated the risk of burning logs rolling into the room. Most importantly, the lower flue gas temperatures, typically 200 to 300 degrees cooler than open hearth emissions, reduced creosote formation and chimney fire risk, concerns that colonial fire wardens were beginning to document in their incident reports. The winter of 1745 delivered the brutal test that would prove or destroy Franklin's heating theories. December brought temperatures that dropped to 8 degrees below zero and stayed there for 6 consecutive days, followed by January storms that buried Philadelphia under 31 inches of snow. The Schuylkill River froze solid enough to support loaded wagons, and ice formed on the inside walls of poorly heated houses throughout the city. For the first time since installing his iron insert, Franklin faced conditions severe enough to challenge every assumption about controlled draft heating. Master Mason William Thornberry's grand fireplace, built according to time-tested proportions in the home of merchant Samuel Powell, consumed 18 cords of seasoned oak between November and March that winter. Powell's household servants maintained fires around the clock, feeding split logs every 30 to 40 minutes to prevent the parlor temperature from dropping below 45 degrees during the coldest snaps. Despite this massive fuel consumption, areas of the room more than 4 feet from the hearth remained uncomfortably cold, forcing family members to cluster near the fireplace for warmth. The kitchen hearth required an additional 12 cords to maintain cooking temperatures and basic comfort in the rear of the house, bringing the total winter fuel consumption to 30 cords for a household of 6 people. Franklin's meticulous records from that same winter told a dramatically different story. His iron insert, burning 6 3/4 cords of mixed hardwood, maintained parlor temperatures between 58 and 64 degrees throughout the severest cold. On January 17th, when outdoor temperatures reached 22 below zero, Franklin's parlor thermometer registered 61 degrees at 8 feet from the fireplace, a temperature comfortable enough for evening reading and letter writing. The household's total fuel consumption, including kitchen heating and workshop fires, reached only 9 1/2 cords, less than 1/3 of Powell's requirements for comparable living space. The crisis deepened when fuel supplies throughout Philadelphia began running short by February. Cordwood prices doubled, then tripled, as city residents competed for dwindling stocks of seasoned timber. Families accustomed to burning 12 to 15 cords per winter found themselves rationing fuel, choosing between adequate heating and financial ruin. Some households resorted to burning furniture, fence boards, and green wood that filled their homes with smoke while providing minimal heat. The Pennsylvania Gazette recorded 37 cases of severe frostbite among Philadelphia residents during February alone, most occurring in homes where fuel shortages had forced dramatic reductions in heating. Franklin's fuel efficiency during this crisis period attracted attention from neighbors who had previously dismissed his iron contraption as an expensive curiosity. Thomas Hopkinson, whose traditional fireplace had consumed 14 cords by late February, with 6 weeks of winter remaining, visited Franklin's parlor on the coldest day of the season and discovered he could read comfortably while seated 10 feet from the iron insert. When Hopkinson inquired about Franklin's fuel consumption, the printer opened his ledger to reveal detailed records showing cord-by-cord usage that projected total winter consumption at less than 7 cords. The mathematical reality of Franklin's fuel savings began converting skeptics as quickly as physical comfort convinced visitors. A single cord of seasoned hardwood represented 15 to 20 days of labor for cutting, splitting, and hauling, plus the considerable expense of purchasing timber rights or finished cordwood. Franklin's system reduced this labor burden by 60 to 70% while providing superior comfort savings that resonated particularly strongly with Philadelphia's merchant class, who understood the economic implications of such efficiency gains. Word of Franklin's heating success spread beyond Philadelphia as the crisis winter continued. Johann Zimmermann's foundry received inquiries from as far away as New York and Baltimore for Pennsylvania fireplace castings. Local blacksmiths began fabricating simplified versions using sheet iron and basic forging techniques, though these copies lacked the thermal mass and precise proportions that made Franklin's original design so effective. By March, 3 additional foundries in southeastern Pennsylvania had begun producing Franklin-type inserts, each adding their own modifications to the basic pattern. The frontier applications of Franklin's heating principles emerged as Pennsylvania German settlers carried the technology westward into Ohio country and the Cumberland Valley. These pioneer families, facing harsh winters in poorly insulated log cabins, discovered that iron inserts could transform survival heating into comfortable warmth while dramatically reducing the labor burden of fuel gathering. Heinrich Müller, a German-American blacksmith who established a forge near present-day Columbus in 1768, adapted Franklin's design for frontier conditions by adding brick thermal mass around the iron firebox and incorporating outside air feeds that worked with the tight clay chinking typical of German-built cabins. The year without a summer in 1816 provided an unexpected validation of Franklin's heating principles under extreme conditions. When volcanic ash from Mount Tambora created global climate disruption, northeastern American communities faced freezing temperatures in June, July, and August. Vermont farmer Ezekiel Whitman, whose log house featured a Pennsylvania fireplace installed by a migrating Pennsylvania German craftsman, burned only 2 1/2 cords of wood during the abnormally cold summer months, while maintaining comfortable indoor temperatures. His neighbors, relying on traditional open hearths, consumed 6 to 8 cords attempting to heat their homes during what should have been the growing season. The scientific vindication of Franklin's principles came through careful documentation by early American natural philosophers who recognized the insert's significance for understanding heat transfer and combustion efficiency. Dr. Benjamin Rush, Franklin's colleague in the American Philosophical Society, conducted systematic temperature measurements comparing open hearths with iron inserts during the severe winter of 1779 to 1780. Rush's data showed that Franklin's system delivered 37% more usable heat per pound of wood burned while creating 43% more uniform temperature distribution throughout heated spaces. Insurance records from the early 19th century revealed another crucial advantage of Franklin's controlled draft heating. The Philadelphia contribution ship for the insurance of houses from loss by fire documented significantly fewer chimney fire claims from properties equipped with iron inserts compared to traditional fireplace installations. The reduced flue gas temperatures and controlled combustion that characterized Franklin's system minimized creosote accumulation and eliminated the spark emission that caused many colonial house fires. The transformation of public opinion regarding Franklin's heating innovation accelerated as fuel costs remained elevated following the crisis winter. Philadelphia's Common Council commissioned a study of heating efficiency that confirmed Franklin's fuel consumption claims and recommended iron inserts for public buildings. By 1750, the Pennsylvania State House had installed Franklin-type heating in its committee rooms, and similar systems appeared in churches, schools, and commercial buildings throughout the city. The quiet revolution in American heating had begun not with grand pronouncements or official endorsements, but through the simple mathematics of fuel savings and thermal comfort that colonial families could measure in their daily lives. Franklin's 1744 pamphlet, an account of the new invented Pennsylvania fireplaces, transformed from a local curiosity into the standard reference manual for controlled draft heating throughout colonial America. The 32-page document, priced at 4 pence and printed on Franklin's own press, provided step-by-step installation guidance that allowed competent tradesmen to retrofit existing fireplaces without rebuilding entire chimneys. Within 2 years of publication, the pamphlet had been reprinted in Boston, New York, and Charleston, with unauthorized copies circulating as far west as Pittsburgh and as far south as Savannah. The technical specifications Franklin detailed in his manual reflected years of refinement and testing. Proper installation began with measuring the existing fireplace opening to ensure adequate clearance. The iron insert required minimum dimensions of 28 inches wide, 20 inches deep, and 26 inches high for effective operation. Franklin recommended seating the cast iron assembly on a foundation of fire brick laid with clay mortar, leaving half-inch expansion gaps on all sides while maintaining perfect alignment with the chimney flue. The crucial throat connection, fabricated from sheet iron and sealed with clay, had to accommodate thermal expansion while preventing smoke leakage, a technical challenge that required precision metalwork beyond the capabilities of many colonial craftsmen. Johann Zimmermann's Lancaster foundry became the prototype for Pennsylvania fireplace manufacturing throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. Zimmermann's casting techniques, developed through 15 years of stove-making experience, produced iron components with the thermal mass and durability necessary for a reliable operation. His foundry's output expanded from 2 units per month in 1745 to 12 units per month by 1748, with orders arriving from as far away as Virginia and the Carolinas. The standard Pennsylvania fireplace, weighing 230 pounds when fully assembled, required careful transport by wagon and professional installation by trained masons familiar with Franklin's specifications. The baffle system that distinguished Franklin's design from simple iron boxes represented the technical heart of the heating innovation. 2 horizontal plates, each measuring 18 inches long and positioned 6 inches apart, created a serpentine path that forced hot combustion gases through extended contact with heat-absorbing iron surfaces before reaching the flue. These baffles, cast 3/8 of an inch thick to balance heat transfer with structural integrity, could be adjusted to optimize draft conditions for different chimney configurations and fuel types. Franklin's manual provided detailed instructions for baffle positioning, emphasizing that improper adjustment would either starve the fire of draft or allow excessive heat loss up the chimney. The damper mechanism that controlled combustion air and smoke evacuation required careful calibration to achieve Franklin's documented efficiency levels. The pivoting iron plate, operated by an external handle extending through the hearth face, had to be sized precisely to create the controlled draft that enabled complete combustion while preventing backdrafting during wind conditions. Franklin's specifications called for damper openings that could be adjusted from fully closed to 4 inches wide, with normal operation requiring constant fine-tuning based on outdoor temperature, wind direction, and fuel moisture content. Frontier adaptations of Franklin's principles emerged as Pennsylvania German settlers carried heating knowledge westward into Ohio country, Indiana Territory, and the Cumberland Valley. These pioneer craftsmen, facing harsh winters in log cabins with minimal thermal mass, developed hybrid systems that combined Franklin's controlled draft principles with European masonry techniques. Heinrich Müller, whose Ohio forge produced simplified Pennsylvania fireplaces beginning in 1768, added brick thermal wings around iron fireboxes to store heat during long winter nights and extend burn cycles from 90 minutes to 3 hours between fuel charges. The outside air supply that Franklin recommended for tightly constructed houses proved essential for frontier applications where clay, chinking, and oiled paper windows created nearly airtight building envelopes. Muller's installations featured 4-inch clay pipes that delivered combustion air directly from outdoors, eliminating the negative pressure problems that plagued traditional fireplace heating in well-sealed cabins. These outside air feeds, buried 18 inches deep to prevent freezing, required careful sealing where they entered the house to prevent cold drafts, while maintaining adequate combustion air supply. Installation techniques developed for frontier conditions addressed challenges that Philadelphia craftsmen had never encountered. Log cabin fireplaces, built from fieldstone and clay mortar, lacked the structural precision of urban masonry work and required custom fitting for each Pennsylvania fireplace installation. Frontier blacksmiths learned to fabricate sheet iron adapter collars that accommodated irregular flue openings while maintaining the sealed combustion chamber, essential for Franklin's system to operate effectively. These adaptations often involved extensive stonework modification and chimney rebuilding that doubled the installation cost compared to urban retrofits. The fuel preparation requirements for optimal Pennsylvania fireplace operation demanded changes in traditional wood gathering and processing techniques. Franklin's system achieved maximum efficiency only with seasoned hardwood dried to moisture content below 20%, a standard that required careful timber selection and extended drying periods. Frontier families learned to split firewood into uniform pieces weighing 12 to 15 pounds, sized to fit the iron firebox dimensions while providing complete combustion during the 90-minute burn cycles that characterized efficient operation. Maintenance protocols that Franklin detailed in his manual reflected the system's mechanical complexity compared to simple open hearths. Weekly inspection of baffle positioning and joint sealing prevented smoke spillage and efficiency losses, while monthly cleaning of ash buildup and creosote deposits maintained proper airflow through the convection channels. Seasonal maintenance required complete disassembly of removable components, inspection of iron surfaces for cracks or warping, and replacement of clay seals around the throat connection. These maintenance requirements, though minimal compared to chimney rebuilding costs associated with traditional fireplace failures, demanded technical knowledge that many frontier settlers initially lacked. The economic calculations that drove Pennsylvania fireplace adoption reflected fuel cost realities that varied dramatically across colonial America. In Philadelphia, where cordwood sold for 12 to 15 shillings per cord during normal years and doubled during severe winters, Franklin's 70% fuel reduction provided compelling financial incentives. On the frontier, where labor rather than cash represented the primary fuel cost, the system's advantages lay in reduced wood cutting and hauling time, savings of 10 to 15 man-days per winter that could be applied to land clearing, crop production, or craft activities that generated cash income. Training programs for Pennsylvania fireplace installation emerged as demand outstripped the supply of qualified craftsmen familiar with Franklin's technical requirements. Johann Zimmermann established a 3-week apprenticeship program at his Lancaster foundry, teaching masons and blacksmiths the metalwork, stone fitting, and adjustment techniques necessary for reliable installation. These trained craftsmen carried standardized techniques throughout Pennsylvania and into frontier regions, ensuring consistent performance and maintaining Franklin's reputation for heating efficiency. The documentation of fuel savings that convinced skeptical neighbors became the foundation for Pennsylvania fireplace marketing throughout colonial America. Franklin's systematic approach to recording cord consumption, temperature measurements, and maintenance costs provided quantitative proof that resonated with practical-minded colonial families facing rising fuel costs and harsh winter conditions. The transformation of public opinion regarding Franklin's heating innovation accelerated through the 1750s, as fuel shortages and rising timber costs made efficiency a matter of household survival rather than mere convenience. Master Mason William Thornberry, who had dismissed the iron insert as a coffin that would freeze any Christian soul, quietly commissioned Johann Zimmermann to cast a Pennsylvania fireplace for his own home during the harsh winter of 1751. When neighbors inquired about his decision, Thornberry admitted that arithmetic had overcome aesthetics. His fuel bills had dropped from 42 pounds sterling to 14 pounds per winter season, savings that covered the insert's 12-pound installation cost within a single heating season. The social vindication Franklin had sought arrived not through dramatic pronouncements, but through the gradual adoption of his heating principles by Philadelphia's most conservative households. Samuel Powell, whose merchant family had burned 30 cords during the crisis winter while maintaining barely adequate comfort, installed a Pennsylvania fireplace in 1752 and documented his results with the methodical precision that characterized successful colonial businessmen. Powell's ledger showed winter fuel consumption dropping to 8½ cords while achieving room temperatures that allowed comfortable evening entertaining 10 feet from the fireplace, a social revolution that transformed winter gatherings from huddled survival sessions into civilized domestic occasions. The insurance industry's embrace of Franklin's heating technology provided institutional validation that carried weight beyond individual testimonials. The Philadelphia Contribution Ship for the Insurance of Houses from Loss by Fire, founded by Franklin himself in 1752, offered premium reductions for properties equipped with Pennsylvania fireplaces after documenting 67% fewer chimney fire claims among insured homes featuring controlled draft heating. These reduced insurance rates, combined with fuel savings and improved comfort, created financial incentives that accelerated adoption among Philadelphia's merchant and professional classes, who could afford the initial installation costs. City ordinances began reflecting the safety advantages of Franklin's controlled combustion system as colonial fire wardens documented the relationship between heating methods and structural fire losses. Boston's selectmen, responding to devastating fires that had consumed entire neighborhoods, passed regulations in 1754 requiring Pennsylvania fireplace-type installations in new construction within the city limits. Similar ordinances followed in New York, Baltimore, and Charleston as municipal authorities recognized that controlled draft heating reduced both fuel consumption and fire risk in densely populated urban areas where house fires threatened entire communities. The westward migration of Pennsylvania German settlers carried Franklin's heating principles into frontier regions where survival heating met its ultimate test under conditions far harsher than Philadelphia winters. Heinrich Müller's forge in Ohio country produced over 200 Pennsylvania fireplace variants between 1768 and 1780, each adapted for log cabin installation and extended burn cycles that matched frontier lifestyles. Müller's innovations included brick thermal wings that stored heat during overnight burns and outside air feeds that prevented the cabin draft problems that made traditional fireplace heating impossible in tightly chinked log construction. The revolutionary implications of Franklin's heating innovation extended beyond fuel savings to reshape fundamental concepts of domestic architecture and family life during winter months. Homes equipped with Pennsylvania fireplaces featured furniture arrangements that took advantage of uniform heating throughout the room rather than clustering around the fireplace face. Children could play comfortably on floors that remained warm 8 feet from the fire, while adults pursued evening activities, reading, writing, needlework, and conversation in areas that had been uninhabitably cold with traditional heating methods. Agricultural communities discovered that Franklin's heating principles applied to livestock shelters and crop storage buildings where fuel efficiency determined winter survival for both animals and stored grain. Pennsylvania German farmers adapted the controlled draft concept for barn heating using iron box stoves that prevented the fire hazards associated with open flames near hay and straw, while providing the steady warmth necessary for dairy operations and livestock survival during extended cold periods. These agricultural applications of Franklin's thermal engineering often provided the margin between prosperity and disaster for frontier farming families. The technical legacy of Franklin's Pennsylvania fireplace extended far beyond its specific design to establish principles that would guide American heating technology for the next century. The concept of controlled combustion, extended heat exchange surfaces, and natural convection circulation became foundational elements in the development of cast iron stoves, furnaces, and heating systems that transformed 19th century domestic life. Patent records from the early 1800s showed dozens of heating innovations that incorporated Franklin's basic principles, while adding improvements in materials, manufacturing, and installation techniques. Educational institutions throughout colonial America adopted Pennsylvania fireplace heating as fuel costs and comfort requirements made traditional heating methods economically unsustainable. Harvard College installed Franklin-type systems in student dormitories and faculty residences beginning in 1756, documenting fuel savings that allowed the college to redirect heating funds toward library acquisitions and scientific equipment. Similar installations at Yale, Princeton, and the College of William and Mary established controlled draft heating as the standard for institutional buildings where fuel efficiency and fire safety were essential considerations. The international recognition of Franklin's heating innovation came through European correspondents who recognized the scientific significance of his thermal engineering achievements. The Royal Society of London elected Franklin to membership in 1756, citing his contributions to understanding heat transfer and combustion efficiency, as well as his electrical experiments. French academicians, facing similar fuel shortages and heating challenges in urban centers, translated Franklin's pamphlet and adapted his designs for European heating conditions, spreading controlled draft principles throughout educated circles across the Atlantic. Manufacturing expansion beyond Johann Zimmermann's original Lancaster foundry created a competitive market for Pennsylvania fireplace production that drove improvements in casting quality, installation techniques, and customer support. By 1760, foundries in Reading, Bethlehem, and York were producing Franklin-type inserts, with variations that address specific regional needs and fuel types. This competitive manufacturing environment reduced costs while improving quality, making controlled draft heating accessible to middle-class families who had previously relied on traditional fireplace heating despite its inefficiency and discomfort. The documentation of long-term performance that Franklin had insisted upon from the beginning provided the empirical foundation for widespread adoption of his heating principles. Households that had installed Pennsylvania fireplaces in the 1740s reported systems still operating effectively after 15 to 20 years with minimal maintenance beyond routine cleaning and occasional replacement of worn baffles. This durability, combined with consistent fuel savings and reliable comfort, established controlled draft heating as a proven technology rather than an experimental innovation. The quiet revolution that had begun with Franklin's methodical approach to solving household heating problems had transformed American domestic life by establishing scientific principles where tradition and intuition had previously ruled. When preparation met opportunity through controlled draft, extended heat exchange, and natural convection, the result was comfort achieved through intelligence rather than brute force, a lesson that would guide American innovation for generations to come.